Hi, welcome to The Body Culture, an exploration of the intersection of anthropology, culture, and medicine in contemporary emerging societies.
Hello, my name is Michalina Grzelka, and 4 years ago I graduated from the Department of Arab Studies at University of Warsaw. Today I am going to discuss the concept of adoption in an Islamic law context. I find this subject interesting for two major reasons. First of all, Islam, both as a religion and as a legal order, places a great importance upon respecting family or blood ties, which is stated in Quran. Verily, Allah orders justice and kindness and giving help to the relatives, and He forbids immoral sins and evil and tyranny. He admonishes you that you may take heed. The second reason is that Muhammad, the founder of Islam, was an orphan himself, and he was raised not by his parents, but by his uncle Abu Talib. So, for those two reasons, today I am going to discuss the concept of adoption and to see what are the differences between the concept of adoption in an Islamic law context and between the system of adoption that is currently present in the West.
Michalina, could you please tell us, is adoption allowed under Islamic law?
Before I answer that question, I would like to underline that in pre-Islamic Arabia, the concept of adoption was very similar to the concept of adoption that is currently present in the West. Which means that, for example, an adopted child was allowed to carry the family name of his or her adoptive father, which isn't possible anymore nowadays. However, with the rise of Islam, that concept of adoption was completely rejected and it was replaced with another system, the system of kafalah, which we are going to discuss in greater details a little bit later. Now I would like to focus on the current stance on adoption. So, it is written in Quran that nor has He Allah made your adopted sons your sons. Such is only your manner of speech by your mouth. But God tells the truth and He shows the way. Call them by the names of their fathers. That is better in the sight of God. So, it is stated in that verse that basically calling an adopted child by the family name of his or her adoptive parent is not true, and it's perceived as a kind of rejection of the real family ties.
Michalina, could you please say something more about the word kafalah itself?
It's a very interesting question. Because kafalah literally means sponsorship. However, it comes from the root word meaning to feed. So mostly it is about providing a person that is a subject to the kafalah system with some basic needs like shelter, food, and nowadays education. And I think that the best definition of kafala system is provided in the Algerian law, in the Algerian family law, which is quoted in an article on adoption by Dr. Ahmad. So, according to the Algerian family law, kafala, or otherwise legal fostering, is the promise to undertake without payment the upkeep, education, and protection of a minor in the same way as a father would do for his son. However, both a son and a father both have to remember that they are not related by any family ties. There is no blood relationship between the two of them.
Thank you very much. What's the major difference between adoption and kafalah?
The major difference between the adoption system that is currently present in the West and between the kafalah system is that the kafalah system has no effect of fully integrating an adopted child into his or her new family, unlike the adoption system that we know here in the West.
And what are the implications and legal consequences of kafalah?
So, the kafalah system has major implications or major legal consequences in two major fields of human life. First of all, it's family name. The second field is inheritance, and the third field is consanguinity. So, first of all, in terms of the family name, it is quite clear. In the kafalah system, an adopted child is not allowed to carry the family name of his or her adoptive father, or in general, adoptive parents. In terms of inheritance, there are some very interesting consequences. Because, according to Quran, it is stated that those related by blood are more entitled to inherit from each other in the Book of Allah. So, we can interpret it this way. An adopted child is prohibited from inheriting any property that belongs to his or her adoptive parents, because that would undermine the inheritance right of the birth children. However, there is still a solution for adoptive parents to allow or to provide their adopted children with a kind of possibility to inherit some part of their property. However, it is not automatic, like in the case of the birth children. So, in order to provide an adopted child with an opportunity of inheriting any part of the property, adoptive parents have to say or write clearly in their will that after their death, an adopted child is allowed to inherit anything. However, adopted children are allowed to inherit up to 1/3 of the property. And now, the last, and I guess the most interesting field in terms of legal consequences of kafalah system is consanguinity. However, before I start discussing what are the legal consequences in terms of consanguinity, I would like to provide you with a short definition of a very important term from the Islamic jurisprudence. It is mahram. So, mahram is a person that you cannot marry, because any sexual relationship between mahram and any other person that is also mahram to mahram would be considered to be an incest. So, in terms of consanguinity and the kafalah system, an adopted child does not become a mahram to his new family. So, for example, let's say that we have an adopted girl and she still has to observe hijab in the presence of her adoptive father or her adoptive brothers. Similarly, mother and sisters have to observe hijab in the presence of their adoptive son or adoptive brother. And it is so interesting that, an adopted boy can even marry in the future his adoptive sister, because since they are not mahram to each other, their relationship would not be considered to be an incest.
Okay, let me ask you another question. How does kafalah system affect the future of Syrian children that have been orphaned due to the ongoing conflict in the country?
I must say that this is a very interesting issue, since due to the ongoing conflict in Syria, thousands of children have been left behind, orphaned. So once the conflict in Syria is over, the international community will have to solve that problem somehow. And currently, the adoption of Syrian children that have been orphaned during the conflict is not possible. I think that the best explanation has been provided by the United States Embassy in Damascus. Apparently, some American prospective adoptive parents have been already trying to adopt some Syrian children, but with no success. So, according to the American Embassy in Damascus, Syria, as a Sharia law country, does not recognize or provide for adoptions of Muslim children. Several attempts by US prospective adoptive parents have failed, although technically some provision was made for certain Christian denominations to adopt. Presidential Decree number 76 of September 26, 2010 nullified the previous personal status law and did not include any specific adoption provisions for non-Muslims. The Embassy's understanding is that until specific Decree 76 compliant provisions have been developed to address adoption for specific denominations, it is not possible to adopt in Syria. And, well, my suspicion is that once the conflict in Syria is over, all those orphaned Syrian children will be put in some sort of an institutional care, like it used to happen in Syria before the war. And I guess that the Syrian government will not encourage the adoption of orphaned Syrian children, particularly if they were supposed to travel abroad in order to live with their new adoptive family, particularly in terms of Muslim children, since it would be very difficult to supervise whether those children are raised in the faith of their parents.
Thank you very much. And let me ask one last question. You have put a lot of stress on adopted children not being mahrams to the new families. Let me ask, is there any possibility, any way, any solution one adopted child would become a mahram?
Yes, there is a way, and it's breastfeeding. However, there are certain requirements that have to be fulfilled in order to recognize an adopted child as a mahram to his or her new family. First of all, the child has to be under the age of 2. And secondly, the child has to be breastfed for a certain amount of time with a certain amount of food, of milk. Once all those circumstances, all those requirements are met, the child becomes a mahram to his or her new family. And this concept actually results in some very interesting phenomenon, which is called milk brothers and milk sisters. In order to better explain that particular phenomenon, I would like to illustrate it with an example. So let's say that there is a woman who has just recently given birth to a daughter. However, for some reasons, she is not able to breastfeed her newborn child. But at the same time, her female neighbor is breastfeeding her son. So, as a result, on the behalf of the mother, her daughter can be breastfed by her female neighbor. So, now we have 2 children which are not related to each other by blood, by any blood ties, which are breastfed at the very same time by the same woman. This creates some very interesting results, because those 2 children become mahrams to each other, which has some very interesting consequences in the future. So, since the children are mahrams to each other, the girl is allowed not to wear hijab in the presence of her milk brother. Also, her milk brother is not allowed to marry her in the future, because they are considered to be mahrams to each other, and any sexual relationship between them would be considered to be an incest, even though there are no blood ties between them. So I guess this one is very interesting.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you very much.